So, okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about 5 high impact wins that you can get with Copilot. And I'm going to have to change that to 4.5 because as of this morning, one of the features was diminished, unfortunately. So, it sounds like they'll reintroduce it. They just, as of this is the other thing about these calls, it's kind of like staying up to date with some of this stuff because things change so rapidly. So, a lot of times people who are limited to Copilot think of, okay, you can use the chat. Here, I'll throw in this email draft and you can just clean it up. And it's going to throw in the M dashes and emojis and whatever. And so a lot of times people are like, it's not really that powerful. That was a lot of people's conclusion. But leveraging some of these techniques, you can really get more out of it. And in addition to the fact that it works and is integrated with the Microsoft suite of tools. Now, these 5 wins are things that I've personally used them for. That I'm sure are way more than 5. And so during the Q&A, I would encourage you, if you've had other wins, let's talk about it. Let's share. That's kind of like the whole idea of Legos. I'm over here building this. Whoa, look at this cool thing that I made. And then Tony might come and say, look at this cool thing. I'm like, whoa, that's so cool. So curiosity is going to be your biggest asset when adopting AI. Okay, so let's get right into it. What we're going to be talking about today is why Copilot. I briefly touched on that. A few of these wins, what's the time cost and like the overall impact, how to implement it, and then open Q&A. So we're a little bit behind, and that's okay. I'll go quickly, but I don't want to go so quickly that you feel like I've just completely rushed on through this. So the reason why I like Copilot is because a lot of companies, especially in finance, are limited to it. So Amanda, I know you're in finance. I know Megan, you said you were a CPA, so you're probably limited to Copilot. That's what a lot of bosses are telling their staff is, you can use the Microsoft suite. So people feel like their hands are tied, but I'm kind of wanting to say like, hey, look, there's still a lot of power here that you can leverage. So, like I said, anything I say about Copilot is true for all the other LLMs. So if your hands are not tied, you can still use every single one of these techniques for your LLM usage. All right, so just a brief overview of why we're talking about this. Everyone's talking about the AI productivity. And yes, there is huge productivity gains that you can have with AI. Just in some of my own processes alone, I've speed things up by like orders of magnitude to the point where it's like now these tasks that took me hours before are done in minutes. Now it's opened me up to do other tasks. But the big caveat here is that we're a lot of times goes unsaid. You'll see this slide here that kind of leads to the productivity hype, the productivity gains of what you can get with AI. But at the bottom it says firms that win are those who operationalize AI, not just experiment with it. And that's really the key is, are you trying to navigate your company to operationalizing it, which basically means you're not just having, oh, this person's using it to tweak emails, this person's using it to kind of like uh, write their LinkedIn posts, but you actually have company-wide SOPs for AI where everyone's using it in effective ways, all authorized by you in a safe manner that passes what you would feel comfortable with. So we have this saying, don't extend your hand further than you can drop back. I did a post about this last week. It's an old Scottish war quote, but basically like this is what I'm telling people when it comes to adopting AI. What is your risk tolerance? What are you okay with risking? If it's a loss in productivity, then that's where your risk tolerance is. Some people are like, no, I'm willing to feed it everything. Only give it what you're willing to compromise. Um, Not to say that it will be compromised. It's just leaving access to it or basically leaving an open door to potentially bad actors accessing your information. Because one of the things about AI, and we were talking about this when people came on the call, is people tend to see it really highly capable in some areas. And so they falsely assume that it's capable in every area. But there's this term called jagged technical capabilities, I think is the term, where it might be extremely capable in one area, but terrible in other areas and have absolutely no common sense. This is why people, if for those of you who didn't hear about McKinsey, They were just hacked within a matter of 2 hours. Piyush, who is Tony's business partner, is doing a whole breakdown of that because they put so much trust into this. Somebody was able to, with an agent, just tweak it and getting around its protocols. And now it's here's access to everything McKinsey's ever built up over the course of however many centuries they've been around. It's a very old company. And so that's the sort of thing that you have to be very careful with when adopting AI, not to scare people from it, but to kind of like pour some water on the fire of the hype, if that makes sense. So these 5 wins, we're going to be talking about master persona prompting, which is if you don't have access to creating custom GPTs, even though Copilot has the capability for this, a lot of times you have to be paying for those enterprise use cases. And unless your boss has specifically said, hey, we're paying $30 a month for you to have full access to the enterprise suite of Copilot, which in most cases is no, you don't have access to creating custom GPTs. That doesn't mean that you can't. It just means that your process has to be slightly different. We're going to talk about that. Meeting summaries. This is all about capturing a meeting and summarizing notes using Copilot in the Edge browser, which is kind of a joke. Nobody uses Microsoft Edge. Well, you might start using it now. Rebuilding spreadsheets because it has the capabilities of building Excel spreadsheets, and then building slide decks. Okay, so let's get into it. So quick win number 1. This is the one I'm probably going to spend a little bit more time on than the others. And this one requires using a process. So for those of you who don't know what a master prompt is, a master prompt is a full body of text that is built to give instruction to a GPT so that it can understand what role it's supposed to tackle and how it's supposed to carry out its goals. Everything from its tone, its knowledge base, what it's allowed to know, how it can respond, how it shouldn't respond, everything. Because if you just go to a GPT, if you are open up Copilot and say, write me an email to my coworker about this, it's going to write the most generic email that that a GPT is going to write. But if you give it a master prompt, which is it's a very long string of text, then it's going to be 10 times more better results. And Piyush talked about this in last month's call. So if you get a chance, go back and watch his presentation on how to get the best, just prompting it to get the best results. This kind of takes Piyush's logic and takes it to more of a, not for instant use, but more of like a long-term use for using those GPTs. If we have time, I'll kind of show the process for that. But I'm sure most of you are asking, okay, but how do I create a master prompt? So what I've done is I've created what's called a meta prompt, which is a prompt that you copy and paste into a GPT that helps the GPT guide you to build a master prompt. So it's kind of like a pre-master prompt step. So I'll put all that in at the end. But the idea here is within a thread. So for those of you who have used Copilot or any other GPT, you have threads of text. Within that thread, there's a persistent memory. But what will happen over time is that thread will start to slow down because it's just building up. Because every time you message it, it has to go back to reference the context of all of the previous conversations that you've had. So what can happen over time is you'll get this GPT within this thread to understand you pretty good. But as soon as you move to a new thread, it's going to forget most of that information that you fed it. So what this process does is this says, okay, over time, when you notice that thread start to slow down, ask it for a summary and retype out the master prompt so that it accounts for all the new information that you've given it. You take that master prompt, you store it in like a Word doc. Now that Word doc is in essence the brain that you can now take that entire text, copy it, paste it into a brand new thread, and you're back up and running. That's kind of like getting outside of it's kind of like breaking the system in a sense. You're still getting the benefits of a custom GPT without necessarily having to pay extra for it. So Copilot doesn't natively give you those accesses, unless your admin is paying $30 a month per user. So, any questions on, or you know what? I will say this. Let's hold questions until the end. I know I'm going kind of quickly. Um, but that right there, that process of master prompting will help you to get custom GPT usage on on a regular chat thread. So the impact of this is depending on how much you use it, you're saving anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes per task. And I can attest to this because it's if you spend a lot of time having to tell the AI, no, that's not what I want, and having to coach it back and forth, oh, that's a good point, then that actually can eat up a lot of time. But if it will give you a response that you like 90% of the time, that's saving you. All right, moving on. So that one right there is takes kind of the most amount of time to discuss. And I'm sure there's going to be some questions on that, how to implement that. So we'll take that at the end. Moving on, we have quick win number 2, meeting summaries from any source. This is a big deal. So if you were to, let's say you use Teams, you can go into Teams, record the meeting, take that video and throw it into Copilot as a video format and say, can you give me the summary from this meeting? Now, if you're combining quick wins, let's say you have a custom GPT and this persona is all about meeting recaps. You teach it for meeting recaps. I want you to give me high level notes on the X, Y, and Z, whatever. Then you just throw the video in there and it'll give you those meeting recaps in very high level ways based on the instructions that you had given it. If you don't do that, it'll still give you a meeting recap based on best practices for note taking, which is in most cases good enough. So this I would say is another huge win. This was one of the first use cases I found saving huge amounts of time with AI is having to go back and, okay, what were the next steps? What do I got to do? If you throw the video, audio file, or even if it's a transcript, it can take up to, I think, 10,000 words, which is roughly a 3-hour conversation, and give you summaries from all of those meetings and discussions. That's a huge time saving if you're somebody who's constantly taking notes during meetings. So depending on how many meetings you have and how organized those notes have to be, this standardizes your process, and depending on how many meetings you have, will save you anywhere from 4 to 8 hours per week. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Copilot in Edge for instant research. Now, this one is interesting because I never use Edge. Edge is always kind of a joke. I am a PC user, so every time I get a new PC, it's like, hey, let me tell you about everything Edge can do. I'm like, don't care. I'm installing Chrome or Firefox or whatever your browser is. Nobody cares about Edge. However, now that it has this built-in Copilot assistant, you can really utilize it now. And I'm actually finding myself pulling open Edge because I don't want to use up my usage for the other browser tools that I use. I don't need to get into token usage, but basically Edge is solving a lot of my issues. So let me kind of show you this real quick. Can you all see my screen? This is a LinkedIn post. This is just an example. So this guy made a post about GPT-5 and SEO. And so what I'll often do is say, you know what, maybe this post is high level and I don't understand it, but I want to understand it, but I don't have time to like invest everything into it. What I'll do is I'll just open up the browser or open it up in Edge, click this button up here, and then I'll say something like, hey, can you explain this post by Rob Hoffman that talks about GPT-5? And it gives me this whole breakdown of the post. And I could even go further and say, break it down like I'm a 5-year-old. And then you can go and listen to it. One way that I utilize this is I will go into my LinkedIn feed and just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling until I've loaded a pretty decent portion of my feed. And then I'll go to Copilot and say, summarize everything that's relevant to me based on current events, use cases, interesting uses for AI, anything related to branding and marketing. And what it will do is it'll go read the entire page and then give me a full-on summary that I can just go ahead and listen to. That's a huge win for me because a lot of times I'll scroll through my LinkedIn feed looking for content to either curate, learn from. This is a huge game changer for me. So that's a huge benefit if you're limited to Copilot. Now, if you're a Mac user, and you're not limited to Copilot, you can utilize other tools like their Claude extensions or Perplexity. Perplexity has in-browser agent, also very powerful tools. Okay, moving on. Also, another thing that I can do is I can actually create Excel files. So it's like I said, it's baked into the Microsoft Office 365 workspace. So there's a lot that you can do from the information that you even pull from the Copilot browser agent. Moving on. So the impact of that for me, I would say it's a huge time saver. Anywhere from 1 to 2 hours a week, just browsing, saves all that time. All right, rebuilding spreadsheets with Copilot. This is a huge one for me. So, if you ever, I had a spreadsheet. It was 2,000 rows long. I had column A or column C and D, and I'm not a huge spreadsheet savant. So, like, I need help. And so I said, "Can you combine these two columns?" I said, "Yeah, here's how you do it in Excel." I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I don't want to do it. I want you to do it." It's like, okay, give me the Excel file. I gave it the Excel file, and then it recreated the Excel file with all the work already done for me. Now, going back to what I said, don't extend your hand further than you can draw it back. Something like that, you might need to verify if like nothing can be wrong. You really have to verify it. Still, verifying may take less time than actually going in and trying to have to manually edit lots of rows and cells. It will do that for you. Now, if it's more, for me, it's more of like a tracker for my CRM. So it wasn't necessarily like if it got a few names wrong here and there or misspelled something, it wasn't the end of the world. It's for my own personal usage. So going back to that concept, I was extending my hand as far as I was willing to draw it back, if that makes any sense. So that's a huge win, the fact that it can build and edit Excel files. If you're using Excel a lot, this is a huge win. All right, and then last but not least, building slide decks. I'm going to have to call this win 4.5 because as of this morning, the tool that was able to do this is no longer available. And I think I asked why, and it said they were restructuring. But part of me wonders if because it was built into their Microsoft Agent suite, if they have limited usage because something as far as like current events goes, Microsoft is under a lot of scrutiny right now because it's Copilot agent. So we're talking about safety and security with Copilot. Copilot now is under scrutiny because it was feeding sensitive data. There was a situation I think where an employee had admin access because they were grandfathered into the Microsoft or into Copilot's understanding of this person's access. So this individual was able to pull salary and confidential information about enterprise or sorry for the executive suite was able to pull all of their payment information as far as what they get paid. That's a huge problem. We don't want we want to make sure that Copilot has common sense, and unfortunately, it doesn't. Neither do any of the LLMs, and so that's where there's companies that were doing full-on enterprise rollouts for for Copilot for their entire company, and now they're saying we have to pause this because it's not as safe as we would have hoped. So I'm saying all that it's kind of bad timing for this presentation, to be honest, because I was like, hey, we can all trust Copilot, right? And I think to some degree we still can, but you have to be careful with what information you trust it with. But they say that they will be reintroducing this. Basically, what this was an agent tool on their browser which allows you to pick a theme and actually give it like a Word doc, and it will build out a slide deck for you. This slide deck was largely built with that tool, and I'm pretty disappointed as of this morning to find that it's no longer available. But that's just kind of how it is. I was telling Linda this morning. I said, "Oh no, this is bad. One of the things I was going to show is no longer available." She's like, "Well, that's actually kind of a good thing to show just how things are constantly changing within AI." But if you can, when they do roll it back out, it will, if you're creating a lot of presentations, it will save you a ton of time. So those are the quick wins. So a quick summary. We have persona prompting, utilizing a meta prompt to help write a master prompt to then use that as a persona that you can still get elements of a custom GPT without having to necessarily commit to some of those higher tier plans. You have meeting summaries. This is a big win. This is all comes in standard Copilot. You have their Edge research tool, in-browser research tool, the spreadsheet rebuilding, and then the slide deck rapid creation when that tool is available again. So, this is kind of more just like an estimate based on the usage, but I would say I didn't create this chart. I had AI create this based on an assumption of if you were using these tools roughly 1 to 2 hours a day. It said that you could save upwards of 50 to 100,000 per employee per year. So that's kind of a big deal. If a lot of your team uses this, if you have a lot of team members who are not using it because they're unsure, going back to what we said about the operationalizing these tools, you can take these wins and write SOPs for all of your team members to start using. There's going to have to be training involved. There's going to have to be workshops that you're going to have to do with your team members in order to get them unafraid of AI. One of the things that we use is SOPs, standard operating procedures, to write down when you're doing this task with an AI. Here's the prompt to use. We actually have prompts that you have to copy and paste to make sure you get the same results. So we have SOPs for how to use AI tools. And so that's something that you're going to have to use in order to standardize it. So we'll put these slides out for you guys so that you don't have to. I don't want everyone to feel like they had to be taking notes this whole time. These recordings will be sent out, but the advantages are still pretty exciting. Copilot is still a very safe tool. The people who noticed those breaches, they were using it to its maximum limit. And so that's where some of these breaches can happen. If you're using it for just basic Copilot usage, which is what we talked about today, you're not putting yourself at risk. Tony could correct me on that if I'm wrong. But these are going to be wins that stack up over time, can really leverage a lot of efficiency in your company. So with that, why don't we open it up to Q&A? I know that was like drinking from a fire hose. I threw a lot at you. If there are no questions, I can show the process for meta prompting. So, all right, Tony.
Tony,
yes.
yeah. Right.
Good stuff. It's nice. I actually learned a couple of things myself. I just want to add one more thing.
Yes.
For people who actually use Outlook, this is probably my favorite use case of Copilot. Is what I actually do is if you open, I'm assuming, Matt, you probably use like the Google G
Yeah.
Suite for your
Yeah.
email. Yeah, so Gemini can do this too. But what I actually do is I'll have Copilot. I've set this up. We have the full studio, the full paid version, but I believe you can do this on the free one. Is if you click on the Copilot icon in the top right, you can say, go through all my unread emails from this past week and give me a list of action items ranked in order of importance. Okay, cool. Here's all the things that you haven't seen, and here's the things you need to do. And like on Friday, I have it. Actually, I've created some agents, which is a different story, but you can do this manually. I'll say, okay, go through all my emails from this week and give me a summary of the important things that were discussed. Okay, that's a great review for me on Friday. Or I can say, go through all my emails over the last month and give me a project overview of the Flora project that we're doing. And it'll go through all your emails and look for everything that's about this project and then give you updates. So
Yeah.
if you look at Copilot for Outlook, in my opinion, that's where you can really see some great use cases.
Yeah. I think that a lot of the reason why we're talking about Copilot specifically is we do have a lot of people in compliance heavy industries that are on these calls, finance, legal, medical, and because we are not in a compliance heavy industry, we can use the Google Workspace, which has more AI capabilities. But to Tony's point, utilizing Outlook. So I've got it pulled up right here. I'm going to just do a quick test before I share my screen just to make sure that this is possible. Because we don't have like the paid those what is it called, Tony, where you basically have that $30 a month per user per I forget exactly what it's called, but it's like the full on, I want to call it Copilot Studio. If I might be mistaken. Some of you might have access to that. And if that's the case, then hey, good, that's good news for you. There's a lot more that you can do with it. Um, so yeah, no, good points. Has anybody else found use cases of Copilot that they want to share? Or maybe just like a lower tier of a other LLM that would apply to a Copilot? Okay. So Tony, I'm gonna try and pull that up and see if I have access to that. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is kind of go to that quick win number one that I was talking about, which I think is honestly the biggest win that most people are going to use is the persona prompting. So let's go ahead and move over there. So, oh, this is actually a good happy accident. This is our Stronger Brands AI LinkedIn page. Anything related to AI, current events, what have you. If you want to stay in the know, we just started, so we're still growing, but I'm trying to get this to be one of the biggest LinkedIn groups for AI, getting started in AI. This is like I say, the Planet Fitness of AI create AI collectives conversations want to be happening where we are talking about AI in ways that are not overwhelming. So, anyways, go ahead and join this group. I'll put a link to it in the chat so that you can get on there and then you can get access to Tony and Piyush and there's other people in the group who do other forms of AI services. So,
Okay, the link is in the chat now.
is it in the chat? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So I went the wrong direction. So okay, so this is Copilot. This is what it's going to look like on your when you open it up. It's going to look like this. You're going to have access to. It's going to have already access to your files, access to apps, and then all of these most recent threads. And so the cool thing about this is a feature that I find to be extremely helpful. Is if you drop down this arrow from Smart, it's pulling different tools. You can go ahead and search. So this would be kind of like your version of Perplexity using AI search. You can do deep research. For those of you who aren't sure what deep research is, we use deep research all the time. Anytime we need to, I mean, Linda, I think is probably the biggest user of deep research when she's diving into a new client, a new industry. She has to lead a lot of workshops. She has to know everything there is to know. So running deep research is a huge deal. Um, Guided learning, never really tried that before, but I'm assuming that's more so for for getting for education standpoint. Thinking deeper, this is something that you can use if you don't want it to give you like an immediate response. By thinking deeper, what it does is it processes its answer longer to make sure it gives you more of an accurate answer. But if you're just asking general purpose questions, Smart is a really good way to use it. But basically, what I've done here is I'm going to pull up my meta prompt and I'll go ahead and share this with you. Can you all see this Word document? So this right here is a meta prompt. And what it says is, you are an expert prompt engineer whose job is to help me create fully formed master prompts that define a custom GPT's persona. This master prompt will serve as the foundational instructions for a new chat. Anyways, so it tells the bot what questions to ask you. It tells you how it wants you to guide the formation of this persona. And then below this, I put down here as just a way of generating ideas because people are like, yeah, that sounds great, but what would I use that for? Okay, here's a ton of use cases that you could use a custom GPT for. This is a big one for me is user clone. So one of the ways I use a GPT, a custom GPT, is to sound exactly like me. Um, so that I don't have to spend a bunch of time tweaking an AI response. I can say, here's an email I got from this person. I basically just want to say, if it's a tough email to like, I got to respond to that, it's going to take me 15 minutes to write up a response. I basically say, here's the notes I want to get at, and it knows how I talk. Then you go and send it, and it's got an email. So that just saves you like 15 minutes right there. An executive assistant. We have one with our business coach's permission that is a mirror of him. So we take everything that he's given us and we make sure that it gives us information and advice in a way that he would give it. So and he actually likes that we do that. So chief of staff, board member, disc profile matcher. This is huge. For those of you who don't know, disc profile or Myers-Briggs personality. Let's say you're dealing with somebody who is a D and you are a high, like a full-on, what's the opposite of D? Is it C? Um, let's say you're interacting with a fellow a team member who's very difficult because they're so opposite of you. What you can do is you can say, write up a persona based on a D. How do I interact with a D? And you could have a custom GPT for every single profile. And you say, how do I talk to a D? How do I say this to a D? Okay, well, basically what you want to do, and so it's going to give you coaching, business leadership. I have one for my sales coach. It has everything baked into it about how to create Excel documents for HubSpot, for intake, for new contacts, all that good stuff. Sales, outreach, marketing strategist, finance and legal compliance. There's a lot of different ideas. So all of these are kind of used as like a springboard to launch some concepts for what you could create. So I would encourage you guys, I'll share this document. I would encourage you to look through here as a way of generating ideas for what are some personas that you can start creating with Copilot today. And then the way how you manage that is instead of because what a thread will do is if I just say, I this is just going to be totally random, but like, how do I write a post for LinkedIn? Um, uh, excuse me, sorry. What it's going to do here is you'll see on the left-hand side, the conversation will be titled something about writing a post for LinkedIn. So the way how I organize these is I say, based on the persona that I've given it, I'm going to relabel this as, let's say in this chat, I had designated that this chat would all be in related to my business coaching persona. So what I would do is I would relabel this business coach, and I'll do business coach 1. And the reason why is because as that starts to fill up, as the memory starts to get longer, you're going to need to move to a second one. And so at the end, then what you'll do is you'll say, write a new master prompt, including everything that you've learned since the first master prompt, and it'll rewrite your master prompt. You then take all of that answer, you paste it into a Word doc, and then you organize those Word docs either on your desktop or in your documents. And those Word docs are going to be master prompt business coach, master prompt disc profile D, master prompt whatever. I know we're almost at time, and this is kind of a difficult concept to grasp on such a quick level, but I hope that this alone has made the biggest impact on our operation for our business because you're not just asking a generic GPT. By the way, I asked a generic because this was unprompted for a master prompt. It has no clue how it wants me to respond other than just generic response. How to write a great LinkedIn post, start with a hook. People, what I'm saying? This is what you're going to get from a generic response. However, if I had previously master prompted this, you would see a much different response. Okay, we are at time. Are there any questions? Does anyone have any thoughts? Anyone?
Matthew,
Yes.
somebody else
Go ahead,
start.
Linda. Go ahead, Linda.
Well, so I've been using the GPT. I've not really made any use of Copilot because I tried early on and I wasn't happy. So after this today, I'll give it a whirl. But
no, our hands are not tied to Copilot. That's why we've never used it.
Yeah. So what you just did when you said a master prompt, are you saying build this prompt and then with every prompt, like what you have pasted that whole thing in, not all of the whole list, but just you are a social media person. Now I've created this persona. So my social media manager, you are my social media manager. This is how you do it. I give it all its instructions. That's my master prompt that I've pasted. Would I have to put that in and then say, help me write a social media post for our event this Thursday?
Good question. No, you would paste it in one time. And so for the rest of that thread, however many conversations you can have within that thread,
it knows.
It knows, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So then what you're saying is that Copilot, at least at this point, has a limit, goes, you've reached your limit. So then you say, okay, now save this guy, social media manager 1. Now we've got social media manager 2.
Yeah,
Is
it
that
won't
your point?
necessarily say, "Hey, you've reached the cap of how long you can have a conversation." You'll just start to notice it will slow down.
Okay.
And in some cases, the reason why I still label them is because I'll have a conversation where I had detailed nuance discussion that it didn't throw into the master prompt because it wasn't relevant for a master prompt. Doesn't need that much detail. But I still needed to say, hey, what was the name of that person that we were talking about at this time? It's not going to throw a person's name into a master prompt because it doesn't help guide the GPT. However, because I had that history labeled, I didn't have to go through a million different feeds to think, where did I talk about that? So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
I'd like to take a vote. I'll let Mark go, but maybe people in the chat can say whether you would want this to go longer so Matthew doesn't feel rushed and you could drop off anytime you wanted. But if somebody would be interested, yes, 90 minutes. No, not. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
I would qualify myself as in the tinkering stage, and it's been fascinating. And I've been using a number of different LLMs, but not Copilot, although what I learned today was definitely fascinating also. My question goes to the trust and the information part. When you first brought up the interface, and I am Microsoft centric over here, I noticed that spreadsheets are there in the desktop, so to speak, the dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you actively give the spreadsheet, it's not going to know. It's not going to be pulling data off your local machine, is it?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I've asked it. Sometimes I'll periodically log on and be like, "How much access do you have to my system right now?"
Yeah.
Um, because I'm trying to see like what it can do. Um, uh, but when I do open it up, shows me my most recent files. So maybe it does. I wish I knew the answer to that question right now. I think that if you're an enterprise user, I would not be surprised if you could say, hey, pull open this Excel doc. Now there is a tool that I do use that for, and it's called Claude Cowork. Um, it's a pretty useful tool that has access to your entire computer based on what permissions you give it. You can say, hey, pull up this file, and make some tweaks to it. Claude Code is also very safe, but for if you're in a compliance heavy, you probably can't use it. Well, thank you everyone who's still here. Thank you for joining. If you're not a part of the Stronger Brands AI, I encourage you to go on there and become a member just to stay in the loop on a lot of this stuff and invite people, give us feedback. Everything is we're trying to grow this group, trying to help as many people as we can. So